It's Tuesday, June 3rd, 6 p.m. here in Los Angeles. I'm Jack Armstrong.
And 9 p.m. in the DMV, I am Sam Giacinto. Lots to talk about this week. Before we dive in, Tech Talk Live loves Before Sunset AI. Before Sunset AI is your productivity superhero. Code Tech Talk Live for 3 months free to conquer your conquests. In AI for Good, it organizes and prioritizes your tasks and puts them on your calendar. It takes all of the guesswork out of scheduling your day so you can focus on what you want to do.
Awesome. Well, yeah, lots of news today. We've got a big story from Apple here. So, big news with Apple's A20 chip to introduce new packaging breakthrough. So, they're beyond 2 nanometers. They've come out with a really impressive chip. Let's dive right into it, shall we?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so what's the gist of this, right? So you may love your Apple Watch, and the Apple Watch is a miracle in technology simply because it's so dang small. It's tiny. And a big part of that is something called system in package. So, what is that, right? When we think of computer chips, you think of, oh, it's one physical piece of silicon. It's one, you know, it's something you can hold in your hand. This sort of takes multiple discrete electronic chips and integrates them into a single physical component. And so, what does that mean? It means everything's much more efficient. You can talk to your neighbors a lot easier. You can save energy. You can increase performance. So from a technological standpoint, right, this is huge, and something that has kind of been enabled by Apple, spending billions of dollars on their hardware division, going all the way back to the early 2010s. This is the magnum opus of Apple's investment in this area. So something that's a part of their watch is coming to the iPhone. Um, and yeah, I mean, for you as the user, this is just going to mean even better battery life, even, higher performance with less power. Um, it's essentially capitalizing on the strengths of what makes the iPhone an iPhone. And ultimately, I think we're going to see this continue down the product line as it becomes less cost prohibitive, right? So in larger devices, Apple's kind of moving this way, right? With the MacBook, you have the RAM, it's no longer, in a removable slot, it's right on the CPU itself. So we're kind of more tightly integrating things, and they're sort of capitalizing on their strengths. So obviously there is a trade-off, right? If this one chip has a fault, you're basically going to have to get a whole nother chip, which could be more expensive, just because it's a lot more complicated. So that's kind of the pros and cons and what we're dealing with. Um, I don't know.
Wow.
As a user, does this seem appealing? Is this something? I mean, it's kind of pushing the strengths of what exists in the ecosystem right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think a more efficient Apple Watch and I mean, if this can create noticeable performance and efficiency gains in the battery department, think it yeah, but will it be noticeable enough for the average user? I mean, chips get better every year. So I think it's also interesting. 9 to 5 Max report went a little in depth on how they actually achieved this. And it looks like they're set to adopt, well, TSMC, of course, is Apple's manufacturing partner, but they're doing a process called the wafer level multi chip module. So this is going to allow the different components, I guess, to instead before being, uh, I guess, sliced up into individual chips. So they're able to separate each component, I guess, to enable manufacturing at a smaller scale, smaller level, right? It's
Yeah,
a
no.
little tricky to understand this, but the SoC and DRAM are going to be integrated at the wafer level now. So, yeah, I mean, more efficient because they're separating the core processor. And one of my big questions is temperature. How is this going to fare in heat? Because I think, using your phone outside in the sun, right? I mean, you notice your phone's performance going down. I mean, it's very interesting to see, will this finally be, a year where, maybe we don't have overheating iPhones? That'll be kind of interesting to see.
Yeah, no, well, it all started with the iPhone 12, right? With the screen dimming, and I've personally experienced this. But if you look closely, sometimes outdoors, your screen, even at maximum brightness, will be dim, and that's simply a self-preservation "I'm too hot" measure. So it's funny you bring that up, because I have experience with it, and it's been a thing again since the iPhone 12, and they've kind of
Yeah.
iterated on making it a little better. Um, but your original point, that's huge. It's a really good one of how heat is going to be managed. And that could be the Achilles heel because different subsystems make different amounts of heat. So, how is that going to be managed? And I guess for now, that'll be perhaps a separate parallel innovation. There have been, believe it or not, some interesting developments in kind of the cooling space. We may have to talk about at some point, whether it be different materials or techniques to move and dissipate air or conduct heat. But again, heat is a very, very relevant issue. It's never going away. Laws of physics, you know. So
Yeah.
great point.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see. I also feel like, mobile gaming with the Switch 2 coming out, right? We see that becoming just more, just as chips and mobile gaming becomes more popular also and graphic intensive. Even things like shooting large video files on your phone and and processing, maybe even 8K or upscaling locally, running local AI models. So like chips just can't get fast enough, right? I think every year we demand more of our phones, more of our, processing power. And I think it'll be interesting to see. I guess so when you say you worry if there might be a performance, or not a performance problem, but a manufacturing problem because this is so new for TSMC to actually achieve something like this, do you feel like it's likely that there could be, again, we have the antenna gate back. What was that? iPhone 4. Big problem with the antenna design. They had to make the bumpers, so Apple's had some design choices in the past where they had to, quickly make a decision. So, I mean, is this something people should be, I don't want to say concerned about, but like as chips get smaller, like do we need to worry about, like, or is this something I mean, your average consumer probably doesn't need to think about it unless their phone just stops working, I'm assuming.
Well, so you bring up a great point, right? So what does this all mean, right? It's a lot. I mean, we're at the bleeding edge, but how does this impact, somebody using their iPhone or a gaming console? And I think the biggest component of that is we're shrinking the actual hardware, right? So this kind of opens up, a new form factor. So maybe a folding iPhone, or as you said, like room for bumpers or other, external user interface hardware, right? So we are dedicating less space to, quite honestly, the stuff that people don't really care about, like they just want it to perform well. Consumers don't necessarily care about what, what really goes into it. They just want it to work. So this allows it to work better and work more flexibly. So now we have,
Yeah.
room for a joystick, or room for bumpers, or room for an extra microphone or a camera, um, or a bigger camera. So this kind of, you know, where space is a premium, this is kind of that's where I think, especially in the phone um arena, we're going to have, you know, not just metaphorical space, but physical space for additional hardware, which
Yeah.
could open up some interesting, you know, uh,
So
could open some interesting avenues.
so when you say that, what comes to mind for you?
Well, I think the biggest thing, right, for the iPhone, is going to be the cameras. Physically, if we look at the iPhone over the years, the camera and the battery are two things where you are limited by physics, right? So a battery needs to be physically larger to hold more power. And, there's really no way around that. You can make it more efficient. You can make it more, kind of move things around within the phone. But at the end of the day, you need volume, you need a big battery. And the same thing with cameras, right? I mean, you in the creative space, it's, a bigger sensor can capture more light. That's just how it is. If you have a smaller sensor, it's difficult to denoise an image because it's more susceptible to, you know, capture, it's just not able to capture, dark or, poorly lit, So I think between the camera and the battery, those are two huge areas that just they literally huge in that they need more space. And I think that will be, and of course, like a folding phone is cool, right? Um, I don't know. I mean, are people going to care about it? Maybe, maybe not, right? I don't know if you've seen a lot of folding phones out in the
Not
wild,
really.
but I think it's still kind of a niche. This it will support that, but I don't see that being like a primary driver. I think it's going to be, the bread and butter of the iPhone is what makes it great, which is the battery and the camera. It's the point and shoot camera, and it's the mostly, good battery life, at least compared to the competitors. So I think, again, kind of giving them a chance to build on their strength in that way.
Yeah.
Is there an
Yeah, I mean,
iPhone
I
feature
think
you would like to see, or wish you had? We have the room for it now. You know.
yeah. I mean, I guess. I think for camera, it's the most noticeable thing. I mean, visually, of course, to people. I mean, it's definitely the most noticeable change Apple makes every year. I think Google, what they did with the Pixel was also interesting, and it's still rumored that Apple might change up the iconic three the design of the three lenses on the back. So it'll be interesting to see if they go with that straight line. I saw someone, I saw my Pixel the a few this past week,
Oh
and
yeah,
it was dark, and they assumed it was an iPhone, and they were like, "Wait, what kind of iPhone is that? Is that the new iPhone?" And
that's
I don't know if they how plugged in they were to like that, but I was like, "Oh no, this is the Pixel 9," But I think it's going to be interesting to see because Apple, whether they're because they're we were talking about on the show recently about the optical lens additions that they might come out with. And again, there's only so you can't really make optical lens components smaller because it needs space to let in light and to allow the lens to focus and adjust to what the sensor can see. So anyway, I think yeah, the camera is always great. I am looking forward to seeing the satellite features, but I think the processor really ties everything together, and hopefully the battery life with all these improvements doesn't get worse because of the chip. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see with the iPhone 18, right?
Well, let's see, the 7 well, yeah, I don't know when. I mean, I guess the folding iPhone's slated for the 18 release. I mean, I'll have to look this up personally, but, I
I
haven't really
think
heard
this
a
is
lot of rumors about the 17,
yeah. I
personally. Other than it's coming September 2025. And again, as you mentioned, the new camera bump design is a possibility. Some of the early renderings look extremely ugly. It's
yeah.
actually sad. I mean, it actually looks a little insane. Um, to be honest, um, it looks like they're almost trying to keep the the tri-camera, stovetop design, but extend it across, the entire. I mean, to be fair, I don't know what they really can do,
Yeah.
but we'll have to see. It,
It will
it's I haven't heard much about.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think the 18 sounds like the bigger improvements, but Apple still makes incremental changes and there could be still a lot of cool things coming with this next generation. And if you've got an older phone, hey, probably like a what 14, maybe 15, might be work probably yeah, 14 or earlier might be a good option to consider potentially upgrading at that time. So anyway, lots to come, and we also have other news about lawyers using ChatGPT and getting caught with it quite often. Uh, Not only to do research, but also to do writing. Did you hear about this?
Yeah, no, and quite humorously.
Yeah,
Um,
it's oh my
it's
gosh.
susceptible to hallucination, as you said.
Yep.
So sometimes it will just straight up lie, and in court, that's not a great thing to have happen. Especially as a lawyer, because kind of zooming out, um, you're not necessarily paying somebody for just legal advice. You're paying a trusted advisor. I mean, there's a lot of trust that goes into that relationship, right? If you can't trust your lawyer, what are you paying them for? And so I think that kind of uniquely undermines the potential, client relationship, right?
Mhm.
Um, but a statistic that stood out to me is that I guess almost two-thirds of lawyers have used AI in the past, and 1 in 10 use it regularly.
Yeah.
To write summaries, to research. Um, it's so it's catching on in the sense like it is in a lot of different fields. But you know, again, subject to not always being accurate, and in some cases just completely made up,
Yeah.
which is not which is not particularly
It's
good.
we're
AI slop is infiltrating even the most professional professions, you know.
Yep. Yep. No, I think this is just another example of how AI is impacting everything from entry level coding jobs, law firms, you know, online content creation. I think it's just it never ends. There's another story, there's another every all the time. And even this week we have the Anthropic's co-founder warning half of all entry level tech jobs, developer jobs just disappearing. I mean, like again, if you're a graduate now in school, like, good luck. I mean, finding a job in this market with AI, just kind of like they'd rather stick to the tools they have. And so it's really unfortunate that, it's coming a lot faster. And as you were even saying once, right? Like, they said this wouldn't happen, and it's already happening, and it's 2025. I mean, what's going to happen in 5 years? People are really going to have to, you know, I don't know, get it together, learn new career paths. I mean, I don't know, maybe work in the AI industry. I'm not saying that's any better, but maybe we need more people working in AI. I mean, I don't know. But then it also feels like the more people that work in AI, the faster AI is just going to accelerate to replace us anyway. So that seems kind of like a spiral, a death spiral of some sorts. Do you see what I'm saying? Like,
Well,
because
and no, absolutely right. The more people focused on improving it, the faster it advances, right?
exactly.
Um,
I,
and I mean, I think a good point to mention too is that hallucination again is like one of the most high profile problems that occurs with AI, and by that effect, I would argue probably demands the most resources of the researchers studying it at this point, right? It's kind of that it's the 99.9, it's the 0.1% of situations that kind of negate people adopting this on a wider scale. So I think there's a
yeah,
significant amount of resources dedicated to fixing this problem. Whether either through mitigation with technology or otherwise. Um, so I think it's kind of something where um, again, like we're getting the lion's share of the resources dedicated to fixing, and is something that you know will also probably
mm,
rapidly improve. Just
yeah,
given because I still hear people talk about, oh, AI is so stupid. It doesn't know that 9.9 is greater than 9.11. And it's like
yeah,
that was fixed like a year ago. Okay. I mean, that, they figured that out. You know, we tweaked, we tweaked the logic, we tweaked the way that hallucination that used to just be the butt of all these jokes, right? So I think it's something to where it's receiving a lot of attention and it's going to get a lot of attention. um, so to that effect, you know obviously need to look into it more, whether it's something from an architectural level that's always going to be the Achilles heel of AI, or not. um, but I think there's mitigating factors for everything. I mean, there's a way to every technology has its shortcomings, and there are ways to kind of mitigate and improve on it. And I think that will kind of always be the case as long as there's innovation and really genius level people working on it.
yeah. Yeah, I feel like it's weird. I mean, if you're going into school today, what could you be in the future that's like AI proofed? I mean, like, for example, probably don't become a taxi driver. I mean, in cities especially, Waymo is a technology. Self-driving cars are already kind of emerging more and more. So it's only a matter of time before we don't have taxi drivers as a profession anymore. We also already are seeing this with paralegals, entry level data scientists, and entry level developers. I mean, it's kind of sad. I mean, because if you can't even be an entry level developer because AI is taking your job, how are you going to become a senior developer without getting the experience that you need? So, anyway, we're already kind of at this very fascinating thing. And I think with lawyers using it, that when they get caught, I mean, again, they're just like, wow, here's this tool we have. We've got all these cases. Let's just trust AI. So again, you've got these lawyers, which are, again, like you said, are a highly educated bunch of people. I mean, they're but yet they're resorting to this shortcut, not even worried really about the consequences of getting fined. And they just see it as, oh, this is a great research tool. Oh, this is a great writing assistant or whatever. And so they're very quick to embrace this technology, not really thinking like, could we just have AI lawyers in the future? I mean, could it get to that point? Maybe. I mean, what does that look like? So anyway, I think it's fascinating. I mean, I think this is just another example of AI taking over many industries, not just tech. Now we've got legal. We see it in many industries.
No, and you bring up a great point. And another quote I wanted to point out from the article is that, even the lawyers have noticed that, the hallucination rate has gone way down, quote, in the last year. So this is something that's already being worked on in the background. Um, and another thing you said was that it's a shortcut, right? We're kind of circumventing the process itself. We're trying to, get our research report in record time. But I think it goes without saying, you know, it doesn't really solve the root problem of making the process itself more accessible. The fact that laws and regulations are difficult to understand, is a function of how they're written, but instead of revising it to use, clear and plain language, we're just going to use an LLM to summarize it. And that way nobody has to rewrite it. And we basically just kind of keep, we sort of just keep using the same baseline, right? And I think that's an issue of itself, right? We're not optimizing the process, we're just optimizing our output. Um, and maybe there's a way we can just kind of power through it, but I think a big part of anything, any job is optimizing the process, and start from the beginning if you can. I think AI kind of just slaps it on the end, and we sort
Yeah.
of get research reports that make stuff up, because it is, I mean, it is very complicated and easy to get lost, even for AI. So imagine
Yeah.
humans doing this. That's why it requires all this education, and that's something where it's like, AI is making it more accessible because somebody can understand something that's very complex, versus, hey, maybe we should make this less complex. But
Yeah.
it's not as flashy as, you know we're using AI for this, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's one of those things. Well, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. We also have, should we move on to our next topic, our next news story about Meta?
Absolutely, yeah. So Meta is doing a little, little legal challenge of their own. Is that
Yes,
right?
they are.
In the EU.
Well, it's fascinating, yeah, because so they've gotten in trouble quite a lot lately. I think for their advertising tech, and also they're frustrated that the EU is define how they're defining or choosing to define the core functionality of Meta's tech. Is Messenger, a core function? I mean, it's part of an app, but is it a core function? So anyway, I think they're frustrated with how and also they're not the only ones. I mean, Apple has been frustrated, Google, but especially Meta, I think, because the biggest thing, they were forcing users uh, to subscribe to protect their privacy. So again, like, is that allowed? Is that ethical? I mean, really, like, if they should allow you to opt out if you choose to do so without needing to subscribe to a plan. So anyway, I mean, they're rightfully they're frustrated because their business is on the line here. I mean, they're basically being told by the EU that you cannot continue collecting data and advertising with such precision without allowing users the ability to opt out, and that should be a right. So the EU is establishing that as a right to opt out. Just simply put, just I don't want you to collect my data and target me with ads, targeted ads. Okay. If you don't choose to opt out, no problem. They can continue doing so. So not all users will opt out. But yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, it's an interesting regulation, I guess, that attempts. I guess the intention of it is to make you know rivals able to operate on large tech platforms. Um, and again, I mean, it's kind of balancing, practices that are anti-competitive, which they could be, with the
Yeah.
advantages of having an integrated system, right? I mean, there are advantages to having everything under one roof. And it's kind of like both can be true, right? It can be better for the consumer and be easier to abuse by the platform owner. Um, so something to keep in mind. And again, it's tough because yeah, there's no great answer to this. It's is it ultimately better for consumers to have all the meta platforms under one app? Possibly, versus splitting it into a separate chat service. Maybe, maybe not. I mean, honestly, as a consumer, I doubt a lot of them particularly care, um, for better or worse about the well, really about the
Well, the
what's on the back
privacy.
end, right? Or
Yeah.
privacy, right? Or what happens with your data. Um, but I think it's again, yeah, kind of one of those things where we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah. Well,
Given the current geopolitical climate and the difficulty of enforcing, I think the EU could be in a tough spot with this, as far as enforcing the rule, um, and in general, just kind of executing. So it's a tough spot to
well,
be in. I mean, I see the intent, right? I mean, what do you think?
they need to give this is building the framework for allowing consumers the ability to opt out, which we haven't really had before in Web 2. So we've since MySpace, Facebook, Instagram, these all emerged, we just kind of take for granted that, like, oh yeah, it's expected that they know everything about me and that they can just target me with whatever they want. So I think it's good that the EU is allowing and kind of, I mean, there's no other way really to do it other than forcing them. I mean, that is kind of the sad truth as well. Like they do need to be forced to do so. Otherwise, they're not going to do so, right? I mean, come on, like they want your data, and unless there's laws that protect it, they're going to keep abusing their power. So I think, in the sense that this is a good, wake up call, learning process, whatever you want to call it, I think it is a good thing. Now, will consumers wake up and say, "Oh yeah, sure, uh, I'll opt out," or I'll take ad free or whatever, will they actually do it? And again, you shouldn't have to pay to opt out of your data being collected and used for targeted advertising. Now, sure, you might see generic ads, but like we all know now, people aren't stupid. They know if they talk about a vacation plan they have, it's very likely you're going to start getting vacation advertising to you. Like it's targeted and they know whether it's something you were searching, whether it's something you were asking Google, Alexa, your AI about or whatever. Like they can track you across platforms and they can retarget you very well on platforms like TikTok, Instagram, of course. So I think that's the problem because, like, for example, a generic ad, for Coca-Cola, great. I mean, okay, there you go. It's an ad and it wasn't, again, about your vacation plan. So I think we before this, right, there was no way to opt out, and Meta wanted you to pay actually to get, you know, to opt out of personalized ads. And I don't know if that included no ads or whatever, but anyway, that was considered illegal as the EU establishes these privacy regulations. And I think it's a good thing. I do, because I would like to see this here, because I think we have the right to privacy, but for the past 20 years, as the internet started emerging, we just kind of gave it up because that was the only way forward. But now platforms are going to have to start, sharing the wealth a little bit, maybe with their users, or allowing the users to opt out. Um, I personally like the model. I think blockchain would enable a really, of course, it's hard for Instagram to switch and they're never going to do it. But I think that in a future where we all have blockchain wallets, okay, for our accounts, whether it's, your social media or your phone company or your whatever you're doing. I think it would be neat if they, again, just like creators that are successful get compensated for the views that they get. I think it would be fascinating to kind of flip that a little bit and say, hey, we're going to pay you for your data for consuming on our platform, because your attention is valuable. And actually, think about it. If they shared a little bit with the user, like, it would make a more valuable platform, because then you're actually allowing people to opt in. And you say, yes, I actually am okay with you collecting my data, because now there's finally a mechanism. No, but think about it. Right now, you have to establish basically, no, it's not okay for meta platforms to collect my data and target me. I think phase two starts to slowly enable, well, Meta, if they're going to do it, think about it. They were just told no. They know that's where the money is. And if they were told no, they're going to want to create a path for yes, okay? And so I think that we're going to that future faster than you think, but we need, you know, the United States to broadly adopt regulations like this as well. In California, there's the CCPA, Privacy Act. So anyway, that is great for consumers, but not every state, has to follow those procedures. So I think we're at a very strange path here with targeted ads and online privacy. And there's also been talk, I know in certain European countries, since we are on this topic with Meta and the EU. uh, Did you hear about the parent company of an adult website? They were required in France to do identity verification via credit card or ID. And they basically just put up a message saying, no, that's not okay. Because think about it. Not that that's not good. Like, yes, it is good to do identity verification to make sure you are a certain age. However, it's probably not the best way to do it when you have to allow the website owners to use a double blind process to enable that verification. So we see World ID, we talked about recently. That's just to verify you're a human. To take it another step forward, you're an anonymous human who's also an adult, I think is kind of, again, where the tech companies are going to need to have some sort of encrypted way to verify our age, when our age is relevant, and only our age, our identity, when our identity is relevant, and maybe then not our birthday. Maybe it's not important to have that information out there. So I think tech right now we're in this borderline of, like, we're trying to reform these processes on the internet, but you really, to be future focused, you have to think about privacy and data collection. Because think about it. Why should you protect your data? Well, do you want your data leaked in the next big breach? I mean, look, all of our data has been out there. It's all been hacked probably by now. Whether someone malicious obtains that information and tries to do something with it, That doesn't happen to everybody all the time, but your data has been leaked. So online privacy is important because we need to hold the companies accountable, you know what I mean, to protect us. And if we're going to use their website, we're going to use their app, it is really important that they don't collect uh, so much information about us. You know what I mean? So it's privacy online is a very touchy subject today.
Well, and to your point too, I think, it's kind of a right that people don't even realize they have, given that the internet evolved so rapidly and people are naturally trusting, it's not, just like using the internet, privacy oriented behavior is something that requires training in a way. Like, you need to kind of be aware of your surroundings. You need to take care of your data. It's not just, you know, you usually, a conversation, doesn't often leave a room, as much as it can on the internet. The internet kind of facilitates sort of that information sharing both willingly and unwillingly. Um, so as you said, I think it's something that, people don't necessarily respect or understand, but also, the people who do hold the keys, again, like opting in is a great thing, right, for the consumer. But if you're a big tech company, you're absolutely not going to change things when the status quo is we get everyone's data for free and you can opt out if you
Yeah.
want. But yeah, who cares? Like, I'm not going to verify identity. I'm just going to know who you are by what you're typing. I don't really
Yeah.
care to, verify. That's expensive. That's tedious. That's a pain in the butt. You know, we're in the data collection business, not in the identity verification business. Um, so again, there's lots of room for improvement, and it also just requires that, it requires that, there's, yeah, I mean, some sort of, uh buy-in from the people who actually control the keys to your data, right?
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a path forward that makes sense for all people, protecting the privacy, but also the company needs to be, again, if it's verifying an age, great. If it's verifying an identity because preventing fraud, yeah, that's important. Again, privacy, you shouldn't always be able to pre- prevent people from knowing who, or prevent companies from knowing who you are. I mean, there needs to be that accountability with a layer of privacy that we know our data's protected, encrypted, and also not going to be abused by advertisers. So we're going to be here with the updates. It'll be interesting to see how the EU goes forward with Apple's case, Meta's case, and others challenging this new regulation. So we'll have updates going forward in the coming weeks here on Tech Talk Live. We're here every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern time. I think, yeah. Don't forget, DM us, call us, join the conversation. Our website is techtalklive.xyz. We're here all the time, Sam. We
Every
were
week.
always,
You can't
it's
escape it. We are in the internet world. Um, so might as well enjoy it. There's no going back.
absolutely awesome. No going back. Well, we'll have an exciting episode next week. We'll be back on June 10th with our next episode. Until then, yeah.